"We don't need you at the desk." "Dad," my son said. Then the clerk looked up and asked, "Mr. Lane, welcome back." The wheels of a dozen suitcases hissed across marble. Somebody's flip-flops slapped, and the lobby smelled like oranges and ocean. I felt every eye in my family swing between my boy's confidence and the clerk's smile, and I did the quietest thing I know how to do: breathe, stand straight, and let the truth arrive before my pride. The clerk slid a little envelope across the counter with 2 gold keys, and my name printed clear as day. "Your villa is ready, Mr. Lane. We've applied your founder's benefits and placed a welcome credit on your account." My son blinked like the lights were too bright. My daughter-in-law glanced at her phone as if it could rewrite the screen. I thanked the clerk, not loud, just steady, while lobby chatter rose and fell around us like surf. This story holds mature family conflict. No shouting here, no cruel details, because hurt is heavy enough without spectacle. If real-life stories like this help you feel less alone, please like and subscribe, and tell me your city and the local time in the comments. I read every one, and your words help someone else find the courage to stand calm. The clerk asked if I wanted bottled water or still. I said still, and slid a key toward my son without making a speech. He could take it or leave it. The room would still be there. The bellman nodded. The kids leaned into their excitement. Nobody in that lobby knew a lesson had just pulled up to the curb. I tucked the envelope into my pocket and smiled like a man who had carried heavier things. My son cleared his throat, then pocketed his temper the way I pocketed the keys. Somewhere a bell rang, somewhere a laugh cracked, and the ocean breathed in the doors. I kept my voice low and my shoulders level. Before I explain that moment, you should know who we were before the lobby lights turned everything sharp. If you'd seen us on Sunday mornings, you'd have said we were solid as a pier. We filled the same pew, shook the same hands, and walked out into the same sun like a family that had figured out how to stand together in all kinds of weather. My name is Robert Lane, but most folks cut it to Rob. I'm 66. A retired contractor who still keeps a tape on his belt out of habit. The kind of man that knows where the studs are in every room of his house. My son Tyler is 36, sharp in a blazer, selling big solutions to bigger clients, a voice trained for conference calls and hotel lobbies. His wife Vanessa has a polished smile, a calendar full of launches and charity brunches, and a quick glance for labels the rest of us don't see. The grandkids are the glue to bright little meteors who turn any room into a sky worth watching. Our town is the kind that remembers your coffee order and the year your roof was last replaced. The church bell divides the day. Ellie's Diner keeps the pot hot, and on Friday nights, the whole county breathes cold air on aluminum bleachers while the band writes light across the field. I built my life on crawl spaces and joists, long days that ended with sawdust in my cuffs and the relief of a hot shower. Tyler spent summers on my cruise, learned to square a corner and carry a ladder without taking off a mirror, and I learned to let him run the nail gun, even when it made my heart thump. We ate late at a wobbly table in the shop and planned the week with grease on the paper. Back then our language matched. Work, eat, laugh, sleep. Success widened his road. Promotions led to points, points led to lounges, and lounges led to a sense that some places are for some people. Vanessa speaks that language like a native, all optics and reservations and the right shoes for the room. None of that is a sin. It's just a different weather report. In public, we still looked steady church, diner, football, birthdays with candles, and a full porch. In private, I felt the drift that starts as a shrug and becomes a schedule. Group texts landed without my name. Dinners shifted to Just us three. Jokes sharpened their edges around old school and cement shirts. I kept showing up with jumper cables and free babysitting, the quiet currency of fathers who don't invoice love. When the trip came up, I offered rides, snacks, and patience, because those are the things I have in stock. I wasn't trying to be in charge. I was trying to belong without getting in the way. If you asked any neighbor, they'd say we were fine, because most houses keep their weather indoors. We built our life on long days and shared tables until distance crept in, quiet as sand. You don't hear it at first. You notice it in tiny ways. The keys moved, the jokes that don't land, the plans made in rooms you weren't in. That's how we reached the lobby with our bags, our habits, and a lesson that would show itself in brass and ink. I felt it coming. Slowly, we started with borrowed tools and a rusted pickup. That first summer, the bed rattled like a coffee can full of bolts, and I drove job to job with hope louder than the muffler. I patched roofs, framed porches, and learned every shortcut that still ends at done right. Tyler sat shotgun with a tape measure and a notebook, 13 and hungry to be useful, asking why lumber crowns, why paint flashes, why a small shim can save a big mistake. When school let out, I put him on payroll at $10 an hour in the payment of late-night cheeseburgers. He earned calluses the honest way, sweeping, hauling, and learning to read the grain of wood and the grain of people. We rented a bay behind the feed store and hung a hand-painted sign that leaned like the truck. I kept receipts in a cigar box until I could afford a ledger, and I started every invoice with thanks. The business stayed modest on purpose. I didn't chase work I couldn't stand behind, and I sent customers to competitors when I knew they were better for the job. Steady years added up. In winters, we remodeled kitchens. In summers, we poured small slabs and set posts straight so fences wouldn't argue with wind. Tyler grew from helper to hand to leader of a two-man crew, and the day I tossed him the keys to the pickup for his first solo estimate, he looked taller than the hood. College was his path, not a test of my pride. We counted the costs at the kitchen table and found a way. I saved, he worked, scholarships bridged the rest, and summers brought him home to run siding and reset doors. When he called from campus to say he'd been invited to intern with a sales team, I told him to learn everything, to sell without slickness, to remember that contracts keep their promises only when people do. He graduated in a dark suit, shook my hand like a man, and I put him on the company payroll a final summer before his first big job with a bigger name. When he and Vanessa got married, I wrote a check for their condo down payment with a pen that shook more than I hoped. I didn't announce it. I slid the envelope across dinner and said, "Start with less worry." That's what my father would have done if he'd had it to give. We carried their couch up 3 flights, laughed when it wouldn't turn, and ate pizza on the floor because chairs arrive slower than love. I changed the locks, checked the water heater, and left the plunger because preparation is kindness nobody claps for. Long before Tyler had points or a corporate badge, I made a quiet investment that smelled like salt. A developer I'd done punch list work for was renovating an old coastal hotel that had lost its shine. He offered small founding stakes to locals he trusted in exchange for a modest return and lifetime family stays when rooms allowed. I bought a sliver, nothing flashy, and the hotel sent a brass plaque with the names of its early helpers. We hung it in a lobby that smelled like lemons and paint, and they gave me a member number that never expired. I kept the paper in a file with warranties and saved it for spring. Those springs became a family ritual. We drove down in a convoy of coolers and beach chairs, checked in with sunburn already a whisper on our skin, and let the days find their own schedule. In the mornings, we built sandcastles like we were plotting fortresses, Tyler packing wet sand into buckets with the competitive grin of a boy in a man's body. Vanessa perfected beach photos, all angles and tagged sunsets. I was the one under the umbrella with peanut butter sandwiches and bandanas in a cooler to keep foreheads from frying. Evenings we boiled shrimp on a rented porch, laid newspaper on a cheap table, and ate with our hands until laughter washed the day's salt off our tongues. The grandkids learned to chase the foam and run back laughing, and I learned that watching is a different kind of joy than doing. Traditions anchored us when life tried to drift us. I taught the kids to spot rip currents and kindness, to share shovels and snacks, to say please to the ocean and thank you to the day. Tyler and I walked the line where water falls back and talked about goals like men who respect distance, his numbers, my projects, where help ends and hindrance begins. Vanessa and I found a rhythm too. She liked the nicer restaurants, and I didn't mind dressing up when the reservation was for the people I loved. But success is a wind that changes a house's sound. Titles arrived with bonuses, lounges, and lanyards that unlock different doors. Tyler learned to talk in flights and quarters, to stack upgrades like cards, to read the status board as if it were a measure of worth. Vanessa moved easily in that air, translating price into pride faster than I could learn the exchange rate. None of it was wrong. It was simply louder than please and thank you. I noticed jokes changed toned cement smell shirt, old truck, cash tipper, and a new sentence at the planning tables. It's more efficient if you sit this one out. Dad, we were still us, but with edges I hadn't sanded. I kept doing what I do. Fix the busted hinge, bring jumper cables, pay for breakfast before anyone sees the bill, and book a room that has a view of both ocean and family. The hotel kept my member number warm, even when we skipped a season. My name stayed on the brass, tarnishing in a way I know how to polish back. When big titles came to live in my boy's wallet, a new language for value moved into our conversations, and I felt the weight of words I'd never needed. When titles and bonuses arrived, so did a new language for value louder than please and thank you. And that's how we walked into a lobby that would translate more than reservations. It's more efficient if you sit this one out, Dad, he said, smiling like he'd smoothed a wrinkle instead of making one. A new group chat popped up on my phone with a cheerful beach emoji, and my name wasn't in the title. When I scrolled, I saw flights discussed in abbreviations I don't use, seats picked, upgrades debated, and a screenshot of a rental van with exactly 7 belts. I asked what time we were leaving. Tyler sent a thumbs up and wrote, "We already handled flights." I asked if they wanted me to drive the cooler and umbrellas, like always. Vanessa typed, "No room in the van. Rob, we're going streamlined," and added a winking face, as if logistics could cradle feelings. Later, she sent me a link to a cute, budget motel across town with floral bedspreads and a window unit that looked like it learned English yesterday. "This is perfect for you, close to the pier," she wrote. The pier is nowhere near that motel. I didn't correct her. I said I could babysit if they wanted an adult's dinner. "We'll see," she replied, which often means not saying softly. The next afternoon I stopped by their place with swin noodles for the kids. Tyler's laptop was open on the counter, the resort site glowing. The browser auto-filled a member number that looked awfully familiar. "You got a login now?" I asked. "Just price comparing," he said, tapping escape too quickly. That number came from a file cabinet in my hall, and it has my name on it in ink that dried 15 years ago. I kept my voice calm and asked if they needed beach chairs. Vanessa laughed and said, "No folding relics this time. Promise. The resort has cabanas, and your cement-smelling shirts aren't invited." She meant it as a joke, the kind that lands lighter when respect is the cushion beneath it. I smiled anyway and told the kids I'd teach them how to build a moat the ocean can't steal, which is a lie every grandfather tells with love. At church, Tyler said, "Don't fuss over details, Dad. We want this trip to be easy." Easy can be kind. Easy can also be code for without you. I offered to take an early flight, to rent my own car, to meet them there and stay out of their hair. "Let's keep it efficient," he repeated, as if I were an optional line item on a budget. I reminded myself that generosity sometimes looks like stepping back. I packed a small bag anyway, because fathers learn to be ready. The kids FaceTimed me to show their new goggles, and I promised the first cannonball would be judged by a man who knows splash physics and applause. After I hung up, I opened my old email and found a welcome back, Mr. Lane, message from the resort that I hadn't triggered. Someone had plugged my number into the system. I stared at the timestamp, then at the calendar invite that finally arrived from Tyler flight time withheld. Arrival marked as Flex, hotel listed as TBD, dinner labeled to be decided by adults. In public, we were fine. We smiled. We waved. We compared sunscreen SPF like a family rehearsing a commercial. In private, the door kept swinging closed behind conversations I used to be inside. I kept my hands open jumper cables, spare cash for tolls, a list of kid-friendly stops, because open hands give and receive. I told myself to be generous until the itinerary didn't add up. That was when the hotel math began whispering the real itinerary ahead. I asked simple questions. I got complicated answers. When I asked what time we were checking in, Tyler said it was a work-sponsored thing with flexible arrival windows. A brand activation with guest restrictions. Nothing to worry about. When I asked who booked the room, he said the corporation was handling logistics through a partner portal, and that sometimes it made more sense to keep the reservation under one profile. When I asked which profile, he smiled like a man closing a deal and told me to trust the process. Vanessa added a gloss I wasn't asking for. "Image matters, Rob," she said. "This is an optics-heavy weekend. We want to present as cohesive, polished, aligned, no surprises at the desk." I told her I had never been surprised where a credit card was concerned. She called my steadiness sweet and asked me not to make a scene if the lobby is busy. I have made a living out of not making scenes. Later, over coffee at Ellie's, a friend mentioned he'd been pricing the same resort for a reunion. He said the inventory screen showed one 3-bedroom villa blocked, likely comped under a legacy membership, with a note that said Founders Benefits applied. That's the kind of line you only see when an old number wakes up. He went back to his biscuit. I stirred sugar I didn't need and felt the spoon click the mug like a metronome. I called Tyler and asked if there would be room for everyone to be together. He said the owner was playing it by ear. I asked if he wanted me to bring my card to keep incidentals off their statement. He said the resort insisted on one folio for simplicity. I asked again who was responsible at check-in. He said it was a work-sponsored thing and repeated the phrase as if repetition turned fog into brick. I said thank you and hung up, because sometimes the most respectful thing you can do is just stop leaning on a hollow door. I walked the long way home and let doubt trail me like a stray dog. Maybe I was reading Pride into logistics. Maybe I was a man resisting the updates of a new world. Then I opened my email and saw a familiar subject line from the coast. Upcoming stay reminder. It did not say to whom. It just sat there like a shell you recognize by sound alone. I didn't click it. I took a photo of the subject line with the date and time in the corner, and I filed it. Feelings are terrible bookkeepers. They count fast and misplace change. I needed numbers. I printed the group chat where the van had 7 belts and my name had 7 fewer letters than usual. I wrote times next to screenshots. I noted when the cute budget motel link arrived and when the TBD hotel label landed. I added a line about the laptop that autofilled, a number only my file cabinet knows, and I wrote the word maybe next to it, because fairness matters even when your stomach already decided. I kept my voice even in every conversation that followed. I offered childcare, airport runs, a cooler full of snacks that never offend anyone. I told Tyler to call if corporate changed anything. He said he would, which is the thinnest promise a calendar can wear. I set my suitcase by the door and went looking for facts that would not raise their voice back at me. So I pressed record not on a camera but on a paper trail. Didn't go hunting for a fight. I went hunting for the truth. The lobby scene kept replaying in my head, but I put pride in the glove box and picked up the phone. I called the resort and asked, as plainly as a man ordering lumber, whether a founder's membership was still attached to the name Robert Lane. The clerk put me on a respectful hold, came back with a smile I could hear, and said, "Yes, sir, your legacy membership is active. Benefits apply when availability allows." I asked her to confirm what benefits meant in the real-world complimentary upgrades. Villa priority, welcome credits, early check-in when the rooms are ready. She read a short list, each line sounding like a promise I never waved around. I gave her my cell and asked to add it to notifications for any reservation carrying that number, present or future, and I asked for a note. Contact Robert Lane directly for account issues. She obliged, spelled my name twice, and thanked me for supporting us back when the paint was still drying. I thanked her for keeping faith with the people who did. When we hung up, I opened the cabinet where I keep warranties and old wins. The investment letter still smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, a single page with a date, a small amount that once felt large, and a line that granted lifetime family stays subject to availability. I scanned it into a tidy PDF and printed 2 copies. Then I dug into an archived email the hotel sent the week they reopened, the one with a photo of that little brass plaque in the lobby. I printed the image and the list of names beneath, folded it once, and slid it with a letter into a clear sleeve. I didn't plan to brandish it. I planned to remember who I am when the room gets loud. Because I believe in backups almost as much as I believe in plans, I booked a refundable room under my own card at a lower-key motel near the marina. The lady on the phone called me honey in a way that meant the ice machine works and the towels are honest. If things went sideways, I would have a quiet pillow and a clean exit that didn't involve a scene. Next, I opened a little notebook and wrote dates, times, and names, a small audit trail only my future self would ever read. I wrote the moment Tyler's laptop autofilled my number, the time Vanessa sent the budget motel link, the texts that used words like efficient and streamlined. I wrote the reservation line I could not unsee. Upcoming stay reminder. I didn't click it. I photographed the subject with the timestamp showing, then forwarded the unopened message to an email archive I created just for this. Finally, I checked my loyalty profile online, reset the password, switched on 2 factors, and added a backup email I control. I left everything else alone. All of it was quiet, boring, adult. No speeches, no accusations, no forwarding of snide jokes to cousins who would return fire. Rumor blows hard. Records stand still. The goal wasn't leverage. It was clarity, because clarity stops you from throwing good years after a bad minute. I washed a coffee cup, packed my tape measure for no good reason, and sat where the light from the window makes a rectangle on the table. Then came the ping that told me who really booked what. It lit the screen, named the villa, and put my name in bold. Right then, the truth. Primary guest. Robert Lane, the app read. Sweet benefits applied. I stared at the screen the way a carpenter checks a level, not to argue with it, but to see if the bubble had finally settled where truth lives. At the curb, the bellman clipped tags to our bags while the kids counted palm trees, and Tyler rolled his shoulders like a man warming up for a quick transaction. He stepped ahead of me at the desk and said, "We just need to cancel the extra room and tighten the folio under one profile." The clerk smiled at him, then looked past his shoulder at me the way people do when a long-standing note comes due. "Welcome back, Mr. Lane," she said. "Your villa is ready, and we've applied your founder's benefits." Tyler blinked and pinched a smile, and Vanessa's thumb hovered above her phone like it was waiting for a new script. I rested my hand on the counter and said, "Thank you, ma'am," because sometimes the kindest thing a father can do is let courtesy arrive first. She slid 2 gold key packets toward me, my name printed clean, and turned a small monitor so we all could see the words that had made my phone ping an hour earlier. Primary guest, Robert Lane. Villa type, 3-bedroom ocean view. Suite benefits applied. We also see your legacy membership here, she added, tapping the screen, so your welcome credit is loaded. Early check-in is approved, and spa access is unlocked if anyone wants to book. The lobby hum went on. Oranges and ocean in the air, but in our little circle, the sound thinned to the polite whir of a printer. Tyler cleared his throat and tried again. "About the extra room," he said, "we won't be needing. There's no extra room on this account." The clerk said gently, "Just the villa booked under Mr. Lane's number. If you have a third-party hold somewhere else, you'll need to cancel it with them." Vanessa laughed a little too brightly and asked whether incidentals could go on our card for optics, and the clerk nodded, explaining that room and tax lived on my folio, but each adult could place their own card for extras. She set 3 wristbands on the counter too large, too small, and said the pool gates read them like tickets, that the villa's occupancy was 8, and that housekeeping loved a tidy dishwasher more than a tip. Tyler looked at the plaque behind her for the first time, the one I had once helped hang when the paint was still tacky, and he followed the columns until his eyes caught our name. He smiled without teeth, the way a man does when the math he wrote in his head meets a number he didn't expect. "Huh," he said, and the word tried to be casual and couldn't quite make it. I kept my hands still and my voice where kindness lives. "Please add my son as an additional guest," I told the clerk, "and place a separate incidental card for their family. If the welcome credit covers breakfast, let's keep that simple." She smiled like people do when a room chooses grace, clicked, printed, and slid the packets back in a tidy fan. "Would you like still or sparkling water sent up?" she asked, and I said still, and thanked her again for keeping faith with old promises. Vanessa drifted toward the velvet rope and called the kids back from the lobby fountain, where they were testing the splash rules. Tyler leaned in, quiet enough for only me, and said, "Dad, I didn't mean." "I know." I said, and I did, because pride is a fast horse, and men in love with speed sometimes forget who taught them to ride. He swallowed and nodded at the app screen, where my name sat bold as a brass plaque, and he understood what the clerk had understood 3 minutes earlier. He had used my legacy number because it was near at hand, and because ease can make good people careless with the hands that built it. "We'll get the bags," I told the bellman, and he nodded the way working men do when they are pleased to see calm in places where calm usually comes last. Up in the elevator, I let the carpet count breath for me, and when the doors opened, I held the key out to Tyler without ceremony. "You take the kids to the pool," I said. "I'll handle paperwork and make sure your card is on incidentals so nobody's surprised at checkout." He nodded again, smaller this time, and Vanessa exhaled like a person who found a chair she didn't know she needed. In the villa, I signed what needed signing, took pictures of the folio header, and tucked the copies beside the letter and plaque printout, not to wave later, but to keep the edges square. Then I heard the kids shout over the first cold hit of pool water, and I let the sound rinse the grit from the moment. I wasn't going to humiliate my boy. I was going to use this moment to heal what pride had cracked. There would be boundaries later, firm, and a dinner where we spoke like men about money, respect, and how families travel together without losing each other. But for now, I chose water, quiet, and beginning. I called two people, my pastor for calm, my banker for rails. Pastor Halle answered on the first ring. I gave him the short version, my name on the folio, my boy swallowing pride in a bright lobby. He said gentleness is strength turned low, and public heat cools quickest when the first breeze is grace. Don't gloat, don't preach, don't make a mirror of the moment. Share the keys, keep sentences short, choose words that make room. He prayed 20 seconds that felt like cold water, and I said amen like a man who remembered himself. Then I called Denise at the bank, the manager who's watched my checks balance for 20 years. I asked what a resort folio really means. "Room and tax sit on the primary guest," she said. "Incidentals live on whatever cards are linked. Holds can be big and drop after checkout posts. Liability follows the folio name unless you split charges at the desk. Make sure each adult puts a card down and get a printout of who pays what. Clean paper makes clean partings even at the beach." I thanked her and wrote a plan I could show without sounding like a foreman. Family text. Everyone stays. Separate cards added. Breakfast covered by the welcome credit. Dinners we split. No belittling jokes. No optics talk around the kids. No decisions without a reply from all four thumbs. Pool at 3. Dinner on the deck at 7. And a quiet walk with me after the little ones sleep. I ended with a heart and a water emoji, because even grown people read better when the message shakes hands. At the desk, I asked the clerk to add Tyler's card to incidentals and leave room and tax on mine. She printed 2 slips, circled the last 4 digits, and handed me copies. I slid one to Tyler without commentary. He nodded and pocketed it. Vanessa arrived with sunglasses and a careful smile. "We're set," I said. "Take the kids to the pool. I'll stock the fridge and see you at 7. In the market, I bought milk, fruit, sandwich stuff, and popsicles. I left the champagne in its bucket. On the way up, I texted Pastor thank you. He replied, gentleness first, boundaries second, silence third. In the villa, I lined the food, made tea, and wrote ground rules on a note card I taped inside a cabinet. Respect in public, honesty in private, patience with kids, no status talk, only plans. 10 words to keep the day upright. At 3, I met them by the pool. The kids squealed. Tyler's shoulders dropped. Vanessa complimented the towels. When the server came, I asked to put their smoothies on their card and mine on mine. She tapped the tablet, read the note on the account, and gave me a quiet nod. Small systems do big work. Back upstairs, I said one more line. Tonight, I want 20 minutes with you too. No audience alignment, not punishment. Sure, Tyler replied. Of course, Vanessa wrote. At 7, we ate with the kids first, then cued a movie with headphones, so laughter didn't have to pick sides. When the door clicked, I poured water, slid the note card between us like a truce, and said I love you. I want this trip to be a memory with sand, not grit. And I don't expect deference, just honesty and inclusion. Tyler said, okay. Vanessa said, thank you for making it simple. The trip could still turn ugly or turn honest. We had a chance to choose better, and I meant to take it together that night. He said I was controlling. The ledger said otherwise. Control to me is numbers anyone can read. After the pool, I laid 2 printouts on the counter like placemats. One showed room and tax, covered by the legacy comp, highlighted in yellow. The other listed incidentals with blank lines for separate cards. I said, this is how we keep feelings out of the math. Room and tax are my gift. Extras live with whoever orders them. Groceries we split. Experiences we decide together. Surprises belong to birthdays, not receipts. Tyler nodded like air leaving a tire. Vanessa adjusted her sunglasses inside. The kids were already asking when the big slide opened. To give them space, I booked the lock-off that adjoins the villa, a quiet room with its own door. The clerk rec-eyed the connector so they could shut it at night, and I could sleep without hearing alarms. I rolled my bag into that room, set my hat on the dresser, and felt the temperature drop 2 degrees. Privacy can be a kind of kindness, and sometimes the only one people recognize right away. At dinner, I slid a simple card across the table with 4 rules in neat print. No belittling in public. Honesty in private, even when it stings. Patience with the kids. They are not cushions. Plans live in the group text, not in whispers. These keep us upright like bracing in a storm. Tyler read them twice and put the card in his wallet. Vanessa said we do not need rules to behave, and I said then they will be easy to keep. I sent a schedule that made room for everyone to breathe. Mornings with Grandpa on the sand. Lunches with Mom and Dad. Pool meets at 3. Evenings we alternate. Deck one night, restaurant the next, and a no-phones walk after bedtime. If anyone needs quiet, the lock-off is a refuge and not a punishment. Replies came like a forecast. Okay, sounds good, thumbs up, and a rocket from a 7-year-old. At the desk, I asked the clerk to note our plan and attach separate cards to the folio. She circled the last 4 digits and handed us copies. The paper felt like a handshake. Tyler exhaled and said you did not have to take the extra room. I chose it so you two can whisper and laugh without worrying about my bedtime. He smiled for the first time that day, like a boy whose dad finally saw the angle he needed. Vanessa bristled at the part about jokes. She said we tease because we are close, and I said closeness sounds different when the jokes always travel one way. She sat back, rested her hand on the menu, and said optics. I let the word blow past like a hot wind. The server came. I put the starters on their card without ceremony. No one winced when the check arrived. After dinner, the kids and I mapped a sandcastle on a napkin, complete with moat and drawbridge. Tyler watched, quiet, and when the kids ran to the railing, he said thanks for making this easy. Easy is just honest with fewer steps, I said, and tomorrow will be easier if we keep it. Back in the lock-off, I wrote a note to myself. Boundaries keep love from falling through floorboards. In the morning, I stocked the fridge, set coffee, and took the early shift at the beach. We built a wall against the tide and cheered when it held longer than it should. Tyler joined us, rolled his cuffs, and dug with a plastic shovel like the old summers. When the kids tired, I handed them to Vanessa with snacks and a smile, and went to settle the groceries. The ledger agreed with my mouth. Room on the comp, food split, extras on the cards that ordered them. He said I was controlling, and the ledger said otherwise, and I did not need more than totals. Control to me is making sure tomorrow is not paying for yesterday's pride. I told them I loved traveling together and that I would not be an invisible wallet with shoes. If I am paying, I will be present. If I am present, I will be respected. If that is hard, we will rethink future trips. Tyler nodded. Vanessa looked at the water. The kids asked if they could have 2 popsicles. I laughed and said yes, and took their hands to the kiosk and let the son finish the lesson. After lunch, I walked the deck alone and felt the day settle into something steadier than pride. In the afternoon, I booked a simple dinner, no white tablecloths, just fish and a table big enough for truth. I sent the time with a note. We will talk about expectations, and I will listen first. I will honor fairness, and I will not pay to fade. Vanessa typed fine. Tyler sent a thumbs up, and I put the phone face down. I thought that would settle it until the poolside comment that said what pride wouldn't. T. Recovery, healing, or dignity. Arc minus 650 words. The villa was quieter, but my head was louder. I woke before the sun and walked the boardwalk, letting the planks count my steps and the tide count my breath. Back in the kitchen, I scrambled eggs, sliced fruit, buttered toast, and left plates warming under a towel, the way my mother did when money was tight and love was big. The kids padded out in pajamas, hair wild, eyes wide, and I poured orange juice like a ceremony. We ate without hurry. I told them the day's only rule was kindness and sunscreen. When Tyler and Vanessa emerged, I didn't cheer. I just slid coffee across the counter and said, "Good morning," like a man who has decided to be useful instead of loud. I admitted I hurt without drama when Tyler's eyes found mine. "Yesterday stung," I said, "but I'm here to build a trip worth remembering." He nodded, relieved that I wasn't sharpening the moment into a lesson with corners. After breakfast, we carried buckets to the edge where water returns to itself. I taught the kids how to shape a wall the waves could admire before they swallowed it. They cheered when it lasted, laughed when it failed, and learned that both things can be true and still be a good day. On the shady deck, I told Tyler the history behind the plaque, not a brag, a bridge. Years back, when this place was tired, a developer sold tiny founding pieces to locals who believed a coat of paint could change a story. I bought a sliver and a promise family stays when there's room, a member number that never expires, and a name on a brass plate. I kept it quiet because quiet kindness is the kind that lasts. He listened. He said he didn't know. I told him he wasn't supposed to. I hadn't told him. I was saving it for moments like this, when the air needed softening. He said, "I thought I was helping." I said I know, and I meant it. Pride is quick. Gratitude walks. I suggested lunch off property, father and son, no audience. A diner where napkins live in a metal box, and nobody cares what shoes you wear. He said yes, like a boy who remembered afternoons in the old truck. Fries between us, the radio low. Until then, I kept the villa simple. I made a grocery list that looked like sanity. Bread, fruit, yogurt, sandwich meat, pickles, chips, a cake mix for no reason. I set a small chore chart the kids could check off, tiny squares that say you belong because you help. I fixed a cabinet hinge that squeaked and left a note for housekeeping that said thank you for making rooms feel like kindness. When Vanessa fretted about dinner reservations and optics, I said we'd split options deck tonight, linen tomorrow, real conversation both. I did not swallow my voice, but I did keep it level. At lunch with Tyler, we sat in a booth that remembered us. I told him what travel used to mean before upgrades were a currency. I said, "Son, I love watching you succeed, and I believe in nice things, but I won't find a future where I'm invisible at the table I set." He looked down at his hands and said, "I've been loud about the wrong stuff." I said, "It happens to good men when praise starts sounding like the truth." We agreed on 3 simple lines: include, inform, and respect in front of the kids. I said money follows those lines. It doesn't lead them. We shook on it, not as a contract, but as a reset. Back at the villa, I cooked grilled cheese, cut diagonals for small hands, straight cuts for old jokes, and let the smell pull everyone to the counter. We played a card game that doesn't care about lobbies. In the late light, I took my walk alone and felt the day untangle. I let the ocean say what men struggle to: I love you, be small, start again. When I returned, Tyler had booked tomorrow's dinner on his card and written family in the notes. Vanessa complimented the sunset like it was a performance she'd finally come to watch. I tucked the kids in with a story about a castle that learned to be humble and still stood. The villa settled. My head did too. Then came the pushback dressed as jokes. "Let's not make this a status thing, Dad," he said, after trying to make it one. Vanessa added, "Optics matter," like it was sunscreen we'd somehow forgotten. I kept my voice low and slid a small note onto the table. The same card I'd taped inside the cabinet, but this one had 3 lines added at the bottom. Dates I helped, amounts I fronted, and the plain words of the legacy terms. I pointed, not at them, but at the paper. Condo down payment, tuition bridge, repairs paid without receipts, and the founder's membership granting family stays and upgrades when available, tied to my name and my number. "This isn't a bill," I said. "It's context and a boundary." Tyler looked at the note the way a man looks at an old photograph he didn't know existed, and saw himself smaller and better in it. "You're milking it," he tried again, but the sentence fell apart at the comma. "I'm measuring it," I said, "so money doesn't drown what love is trying to say." Vanessa stared past me toward the lobby, where the plaque glowed like a quiet witness, and said, "People are watching. They'll see a family using manners," I answered, "and a grandfather refusing the role of invisible wallet." Tyler folded, unfolded, and finally flattened his hands. "What do you want from me?" he asked without heat. "A simple apology," I said, "and a promise include, inform, and no public digs, especially around the kids." Silence made a small ring on the table where someone's glass had sweated. Then Tyler's voice found the door it had been knocking on all day. "I'm sorry, Dad." He didn't pad it with reasons. He let it be a full sentence, and something in the room let go. "I've been trying to look like a man other people admire, and I forgot to act like the son who admires you." He reached for the note and turned it over, as if weight lived on both sides. Vanessa held the edge of the table and said, "The optics were mine. I thought polish would keep us from embarrassment, and it turned into a way of erasing you." She didn't say sorry yet, but the sentence walked in that direction. The kids, who had returned for dessert, set their spoons down and looked from face to face. "No more jokes about Grandpa," the older one said, "not dramatic, just firm the way children are when they announce a new rule for a game they love." That did what my lecture never could. It turned the air human again. Vanessa softened, put a hand on Tyler's shoulder, and finally looked me in the eye. "I'm sorry," she said, "for the digs, the exclusions, and for treating generosity like a prop. I want us to be a family people notice because we're kind, not because we're curated. I nodded and pushed the note back to my side. Then here's the promise, I said. Include me in plans, inform me of changes, and keep public respect even when we're tired. I'll match that with money handled in daylight and visits that feel like gifts, not leverage. Tyler said yes, and he said it like a man signing a better contract with his own heart. We paid the check without ceremony, incidentals on their card, tip on mine, and walked the deck until the kids found the moon in the pool lights. Later, in the lock-off, I wrote one more line on the same card and slid it back into the cabinet. Family first, receipts second, pride somewhere far down the page. In the morning, we built a new sandcastle and let the ocean judge it kindly. Tyler brought coffee, Vanessa brought sunscreen, and the kids brought laughter that didn't need permission. Paper beats spin even on vacation. And that night, peace felt earned, not staged, and it stayed a while. 1 year later, I planted tomatoes, so I'd have something to tend that gives back. I built 2 shallow boxes along the fence, filled them with compost and red clay, and tied twine to stakes like small promises. When the first fruit blushed, I felt the tight place in my chest loosen, as if a window finally opened. Work is smaller now, steadier. I keep a morning list, drink water, and thank God for a day that asks for patience more than pride. Tyler asked me to meet his lawyer, and I adjusted my estate the quiet way, no speeches, just signatures that protect love. We set a modest trust for the grandkids, books and camps now, tuition help later, and one line item I named on purpose trips with Grandpa. It funds ferry tickets, zoo passes, and 1 ball game a year, not status but time, with a neutral co-trustee so everyone sleeps easy. I wrote 3 guardrails into the letter. Include, inform, respect. Money follows those words. It does not lead them. Boundaries with kindness became habit daily. Group texts include everyone. Logistics live in daylight, and we add cards without a sigh. Public jokes travel up instead of down, and private worries meet at a table with water and paper, not volume. The second year, the invitation came from Tyler, not me. Dad, can you come? Small place midweek, let's keep it simple, he texted. We rented a little cottage with wobbly chairs and a porch that faced the wind. We cooked more than we ordered, shared the sink, and split bills without a lesson. Vanessa packed sandwiches, took pictures of the kids with sand on their noses, and printed them on cheap paper she tucked into an envelope for my fridge. Tyler booked dinner on his card before I could reach for mine, and he said thank you without looking around to see who heard it. We walked the waterline at dusk and talked about work in small words and family in long ones, and nobody mentioned optics. I told the kids the story of the plaque, not as a wedge, but as a lesson about people who believed in a tired building and took turns polishing brass. We stopped by the lobby on the drive home, wiped our name with a napkin, and laughed when the letters shone back. At home, I keep a small notebook in the drawer that used to hold receipts. These days it holds 3 lines I try to live by. Family first, receipts second, pride way down the page. Sometimes I still say no. I don't fund what erases me, and I don't disappear when I'm funding, and peace has learned the path back to my door. The trust sends 2 envelopes each June, 1 marked books and 1 marked Grandpa Days, and the stamps feel like little green lights. We spend them on ferries and ball games, on ice cream that melts too fast, and on a rowboat that goes nowhere important. The plaque is a story now, not a scoreboard. It reminds us that promises can live long lives when people keep them, and that families grow straighter when money stands in daylight. If you're where I stood, listen close. Respect reads better than receipts, but keep the receipts. When a trip, a dinner, or a plan leans on your wallet, start with breath and set terms in daylight. Do not fund what disrespects you. If you're paying, be present. If you're present, be respected. If not, pause the payment and the plan. Write expectations early and simple. Who's invited, who decides, who pays for what. Separate incidentals at the desk so feelings don't end up on a bill. One folio for room and tax, each adult's card for extras. Use memberships wisely. A number is a tool, not a throne. Share benefits, not blame, and never treat legacy perks as a weapon. Put it in writing without heat. Text the plan, confirm the cards, ask for a printed folio header. Clean paper keeps peace. Protect the long game. Trusts over rumors, letters of intent over assumptions. Earmark small funds for grandkid time and learning, and add a neutral co-trustee so kind ideas survive busy seasons. Choose dignity over drama, especially in public. Courtrooms and counters read numbers, not speeches. Say less, show more. If apologies come, accept the clean ones and let the lesson carry forward. If they don't, keep your boundaries polite and firm. The rule that saved us can travel with you. Include, inform, respect. That line decides whether money fuels family or feeds resentment. Teach the kids what fairness sounds like. Kindness up the chain, humor that doesn't punch down, and gratitude said out loud. Keep a small log for your self-dates, amounts, decisions, so memory doesn't have to do heavy lifting when feelings get loud. And remember that simple habits steady the day. Early walks, honest food, and a table big enough for truth. If this helped, drop your city and your local time in the comments and tell me what you would have done. I read every word. Subscribe for more true life stories like this. Your super thanks helps me keep sharing and helps someone else find the courage to stand calm. Share one boundary line that worked for you and one you wish you'd drawn sooner. If you want simple wording templates, say boundary list, and I'll post mine in a pinned comment. Your story may steady someone today. Thank you for listening with care and for choosing gentleness that still tells the truth. If you're ready for another story, the next one starts with a wedding toast.